Thank you so
Hello.
much. Thank you so much, panelists, for joining in. How many of you have any idea what D2C is? Obviously, you can't answer, all of you. How many of you know what D2C is? What it is? Oh my God, what is D2C? That's right, direct to consumer brand. What is TTYL? Gen Zs, huh? Gen Zs. What is BRB? Be right back, huh? What is CAC? That's nice. And we are right here to decode that in some sense. I have absolutely no knowledge about that, but we have experts on the panel to decode that for you. We will be also diving into no more strategies, how to drive, how to grow, how to expand your D2C business from 0 to 10 and 10 to 1000 and maybe more zeros to that. All of these are my good friends, and we will try to have a very candid chat and try to see what they have done good in their businesses and what actually helped them to continue to grow and come here. We will quickly start how you introduce yourself in one line without telling us that you are the founder of the company. We already know that. Go for it.
I think I'm a student of life. I'm Shridha.
Good to know, Rahul.
Hi, Rahul Singh here. I'll just say, I'm a champion of sustainability. So
Ma-
anything that counts as war on plastics is my mission.
My goodness, Priyanka.
So I help people keeping them happy. So that's what is me, and I'm Priyanka Sachdeva.
We need
Thank
to talk
you.
more.
Yes.
Dheeraj?
Yeah, we bet on underdogs. I think that's been one of the strategy that has worked for us.
Very interesting, very interesting. Now we actually want to know, let's try to break it down first. What actually adds to our customer acquisition cost? Now, yesterday I had a panel discussion which actually talked about the confluence between the online and offline channels, because a lot of online brands are now stepping into the brick or mortar, and the algorithm is completely different. The customers might be the same, but the algorithm offline and online are distinctly different. Break it down. What actually adds to this customer acquisition cost? Yeah, please, please.
So, how many of you know what is customer acquisition cost apart from its full form? And what about others?
I have no clue.
So whether it is online or offline, so in online you can of course calculate it easily because there are matrices available, and there are dashboards on which you can actually see the calculation of customer acquisition cost. But सिंपल भाषा में एक कस्टमर को अपनी वेबसाइट पे लाके कन्वर्ट करने में कितने पैसे लगे इज कस्टमर एक्विजिशन कॉस्ट. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, इफ a customer ends up purchasing something worth 1,000 rupees from your website, but to get that customer, and you got, let's say, 1,000 customers, but out of which only one got converted. So what will be your conversion percentage, by the way? Huh? 0.1%, right? So अगर 100 में से एक होता तो 1% होती, 1000 में से एक है तो 0.1%. Assuming you have spent 10,000 rupees for getting those 1,000 customers on your website, but only one got converted. And that one individual ended up making a purchase of 1,000 rupees. So against an average, or against a sale of 1,000 rupees, your customer acquisition cost is 1,000 rupees. It's a loss making business because transit आपका है, logistics आपकी है पूरी, and the cost of goods sold plus your OPEX, everything is yours. So it's a loss making business. ऐसा नहीं है कि 1,000 रुपए कमा के 1,000 रुपए लगा के 1,000 रुपए कमा लिए, right? So what are the factors that attribute to it? Basically, in addition to your overall logistics, OPEX, your manpower, everything, it is, if you look at it directly, the cost that is reflected on Facebook, Google and other platforms dashboards to acquire a customer and to be able to convert that customer is customer acquisition cost.
Good to know. Very, very candidly explained. Now, Dheeraj, I'm coming to you. We know that this imbalance, this equation of customer acquisition cost will ever remain there at all. But when it comes to the strategies, actionable work points, apart from that, what has been your ethos behind it? how important has it been for you to balance that? How do you look at it from a founder's perspective? How important is that for you to balance it? We know that it will burn your cash, but how important is it to balance? Let the cash burn, or what can be the ROI on that? How do you look at it personally?
So basically, I think many people get too hung up on CAC, right? I define this as an equation which has 5 elements. So one is your brand affinity, कि आप यदि कुछ भी बेच रहे हैं तो उस ब्रांड का लोगों के मन में क्या affinity है, खरीदना चाहते हैं नहीं खरीदना चाहते. Second is product, कि आपका product proposition कैसा है, right? Third is content, and fourth is what I call Mark Zuckerberg की Fitari or whatever you call it, right? It's a black box that nobody knows what's happening. Whenever you go to any marketing event or you talk to any marketing person, they end up only talking about this black box, right? And more often than not, this is not under the control of the brand, right? Today, Mark Zuckerberg may decide that आज इसका cost per click 4 रुपए, कल 10 रुपए हो जाएगा, and then suddenly all the brands are like finding out कि हम क्या करें, क्या नहीं करें, क्या नहीं हो रहा, and all of that. Right? So as a brand, there are 3 things which are under your control, which is one, the brand, right? So how do you create brand affinity irrespective of what Facebook is doing to you, right? And there again, I believe ki you need to look at it from a brand perspective. You should not look at it from a channel perspective. So I hate these words, D2C, digital first brand, offline brand. ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता, right? एक brand है, and there are few channels that you have available for selling, right? You need to explore and sell through all of them, right? Second, people underestimate the product. Abhi bhi, in spite of all the ho halla and whatever people say, I am a very, very firm believer on the product. Product is the king. If the product is good, believe me, it will sell, right? Obviously, the proposition has to be right. Matlab, if you're selling something for 100, the customer needs to perceive it for, being worth 100. So that's like important. And the third thing I think which has become very, very important in today's day and world is creative. So what's happening, especially with the black box Facebook, I think, it is becoming very automated. So once your brand has reached a certain stage, 99% of the people get it right? There's hardly any difference that you're able to make there. The biggest difference that you can make is in terms of creating content which resonates with your customer. So I think, instead of talking about CAC, I hope that the industry now moves to talking about content and creating, communication that resonates with the customer. So Hamara as a brand, for example, last couple of years, we have been very focused in terms of creating capability which creates good content that, resonates with the customer. We have realized कि वो black box तो चलता ही रहेगा, and you get it right. मतलब, 10% here and there, more than that you can't make a difference. But what can really make a difference is your product, is the brand affinity that you create, and the content that you're creating day in, day out.
Good to know. So, Dheeraj is emphasizing on exactly product market fit. So, alone product or alone market won't work. Product market fit is the only way to go forward. I saw Rahul nodding and agreeing with Dheeraj a lot. Yesterday in our discussion, we had a lady on the panel, and she emphasized on how for some brands it's important to scale at any cost. Now that we know that the market is moving towards highlighting the importance of profitability, lean operations, how do you look at it? We know that it's important irrespective of what you have in your hand and what the dynamics of the market expects you to do. How do you look at being lean in your operations, and with that you consistently be present in the market all across?
Should I take it? Okay. So just as an introduction, right, so over the last 2.5 years, we expanded our operations around 11 countries, right, and which includes the countries from the West as well as our home country, India. So one thing I would say is that we have, for the first 14 months of our journey, right, we never took any funding, right? So we are one of those D2C brands that actually started bootstrapped, and we scaled from like 0 to 600 crores in revenue in like 2.5 years across 11 countries. So what we very quickly discovered that in terms of either our operations or our customer acquisition or our marketing efforts, we have to be very surgical and very pinpointed in terms of how we target our customers, where we launch, where our operations center has to be, where our consolidation centers has to be. In fact, if I look at my company today, 60% of our employees are data analytics employees, right? I'll give you just one example. About 6 months back, we launched a brand in India. And like when we entered India, everybody said that India's story is like massive. Like, you know, there is extreme diversity. Every state is a different ball game. Every customer is different. Every part of the culture is different, right? So how do you really go and coherently target that kind of market, right? When we truly started understanding the data of India, so we basically pointed out, we looked at the POS data, 806 districts, 19,000 pin codes. That's your India. Of that, when we started looking at the consumption patterns of our cohorts, right, we very quickly discovered that there are only 18 cities in India that consumes 80% of our product category. 18 cities, that's it. Of that 18 cities, let's take example of Ghaziabad. Within Ghaziabad, Indirapuram consumes 80% of Ghaziabad in our category. Within Indirapuram, there is only 3 pin codes that consume 80% of Indirapuram. So we literally boiled down the entire India story to 196 pin codes. So when you are basically building a brand, launching products, acquiring customers, the more surgical that you go with your data and be very precise in terms of targeting your customers, knowing your customers. I'm very proud to say even on like online channels, we can tell you which product will sell on what day, between what hours, in what city, and who will buy it. So I think that's something that we realize is the strength of the company, right? I fully agree with Dheeraj that product has to sell itself, right? Product market fit is very important, right? Price points are very important. But the more you are driven by data and less by intuition, right? That sort of worked for us in the last 2.5 years.
So what
I just want to ask something, right? I'm little intrigued by this. So this data that you're talking about, this is primarily only online, or this is online, offline both?
It's both online and offline.
Because offline, obviously, you know, if your offline presence in a certain pin code, then the sales will be driven from that.
So you have the POS data available with some of the largest retailers. So there are ways to get that data.
Sure. Online, what is this percentage? So if you just leave aside offline
right,
and look at this number only for online, have you been able to kind of get that data for online?
So online is very spread out, right? You know, in my category again, right, you know, almost 70-80% consumption happens in tier 1 and tier 2 cities, right? Only 30% in the tier 3 and onwards, right? And again, like that's pretty much the data there. So getting the online data is easier. But with the Google Pay and the Phone Pay and the Paytms and the credits of the world, it is now becoming easier to get the offline data as well from a POS perspective. Yeah,
So
it wasn't available in India. Yeah, we could get that data very easily from IRI, Nielsen in the US, but it's getting better in India now.
Paytm is much better.
It is better, absolutely.
Yes. Now I could clearly see the old school strategy meeting the new gen technology led strategies. Old school always say that focus on your product, be better in your product, and product will sell. Yesterday we had a gentleman on our panel. He was betting high on this point only. Coming to you, Priyanka, we know that D2C segment as a whole is huge. It's now $66 billion market in India, which was last year $55 billion, and it is expected to grow 10, 12, maybe more billion dollars. When we segment it further, we have many more sectors and segments below this, but largest of all is fashion and accessories. We know that in these categories, we have subsegments. Maybe categorize it further. Now I'm talking to pinpointing it more. A lot of founders are now looking forward to innovating and disrupting the niches of the niches maybe. How do you look at it? We can see a lot of skincare brands all around. What's different in those? How are founders see those sectors so promising? How strongly do you look at niches of D2C?
So, first of all, I would like to say I'm into completely a niche category. and people mistake us.
That's why this question.
Yes, I understand that. So people think that we are a beauty brand, but no, we are a health and wellness brand. So what we do is, with the help of essential oil, because this is the only thing through inhalation or topical uses or consumption, you can control or balance your hormones. And 95% of the problem what we have is all hormonal, right? But people are not aware about it. So we are, manufacturing products for concern specific like sleep disorder, anxiety, depression, and concentration and everything. So here, in kind of niche what we are trying to create, people think कि यार मुझे melatonin strip ले लेना है या फिर मुझे sleeping pills ले लेने हैं, something like that can help us. But the problem is they have no idea about that something in natural is present which they can take without any side effect. They can cure their ailments, right? So when you talk about niche, education and awareness, what we have felt as a brand is the most important thing, right? And when you talk about education and awareness in essential oil category, particularly, I'll tell you, when you Google, you have 300 brands coming up, right? I sell, let's say, lavender oil in 1,000 rupees, people will stop in 500 rupees. 199 से भी शुरू हो जाता है. Somebody came and told me कि यार मुझे रोज ऑयल तो है ना ऑनलाइन मुझे 300 रुपए का मिल रहा है 30 ml. मैंने कहा मैं एक ड्रॉप भी नहीं दे सकती भाई. Right, because it is all about the purity. When you cannot play with the health of people, right? So in that case you have to give that. So when it comes to the niche, you have to be what Dheeraj was talking about, content led. So वो content led होना चाहिए, and content maybe now online you have content also, it is real difficult to believe the content. So it has to come from the right source. So what we do is we go through doctors channel and doctors and dietitian, they prescribe our product. We are selling it through online also. We try selling it through 1mg or in offline we are present in almost chemist outlet and something like that. So sometimes it's not that only online you can create it. You will have to create the believability by showing it offline. Until unless people are not experiencing it, they won't believe it. It's not just something accessories or fashion as you spoke about कि एक कपड़ा है आज मैंने ये पहन लिया कल मैं कुछ और पहन लूँगी, right? So it is something when you have to do it, you will have to go there and you will have to play that role on ground. It is all about ground. Yes, online आपको दिखाना पड़ेगा because CAC we are talking about. So customer acquisition has to happen. It will take money as well, but you need to see कि हमारा lifetime value of the customer क्या आ रहा है. That is very important, and then only you can take it up.
Do you somehow, if I be very specific to your segment, do you somehow see a scope of losing out on a very huge customer base being in the niche?
See, it is like everybody cannot use everything, right? It is about the believability. So I cannot expect anyone who, let's say for example, people say मुझे natural चाहिए, but they will say, let's say lavender as an example, I am talking about lavender. They want lavender in 199 and the same result or the impact of 1,000 rupees lavender. Is it possible? Do you think so? It won't happen. So definitely yes, we are in niche and that is what makes us niche. I cannot go and talk to masses about my product. I am very, very categorically, placed in the niche category.
Fair point, fair point. Everybody of you have pointed out storytelling and content in your opening remarks, and I am the person who is absolutely a people person clearly, and I love listening to stories. Let's talk about how you place your content. What has been your ethos behind that, and what is the core, or let's say the prominent factor of your storytelling when it comes to your content? Yeah, let's start with stories now. Huh? Anybody wants to go first?
Yes, I have a story and it's the recent one. So, with Asian Hospital, that they are prescribing our product. And there was a lady, 82-year-old, geriatrics department. They had a lady, who had lung problem. It was not functioning properly. And once your lungs are not functioning properly, your heart rate would be very high, right? When the heart rate is high, you have to have medication for that. फिर आपको नींद भी अच्छी नहीं आएगी. So they gave our insomnia oil to that lady for 7 days, and then the doses for that particular heart rate thing was reduced. So if you are coming up with a real time story, if that lady is coming up and saying you this is what the benefit I have got, you won't believe it, is it? You will believe it. If I am coming up with some problem and I am saying that, you know, business world has solved my problem, who will not believe it? People will believe it, right? So it is like that. If it is coming from the horse's mouth, people will believe it. So that is what the story I believe in.
Authenticity matters, huh? Transparency matters. Rahul, go for it.
Yeah, so I very much agree with Priyanka here, right? That look, the believability of the story and how deeply you connect to a customer's problem, right? You know, these are the two factors that really truly transcends on the success of your content, right? You know, so I'll tell you, like, you know, recently there was Diwali in India, right? So we had this campaign, right? You know, where we all celebrate Diwali, we all have Diwali parties, and I'm sure it's going to continue till New Year's time. So everybody in India thinks, right? For example, we're in the sustainable disposable category, right? So everybody thinks that we have a maid, like, you know, and who will come and will clean the dishes, yada, yada, yada. So we ran an entire campaign which said, maid ki bhi to Diwali hoti hai, right? So we literally pushed down the point that, hey, Diwali is not just about you and your family, right? Diwali is everyone around you, your friends, even the people who work with you and work for you, right? And I think that resonated a really good lot with our customers, right? You know, we saw a lot of engagement on that. We did a lot of successful customer acquisition through that channel. So the believability, the real use case for the customers, and that emotional connect, right? Those are the 3 points that we truly saw as the success factors of our content generation there.
Now, Dheeraj, I know that you must have a lot of Gen Z customers to you. How are you catering to that, and how are you tapping that?
So when we started Campus Sutra, right, it was based on a very simple insight that I used to work for Walmart earlier, and wahan par, any Western country, you'll see that there's this campaign called Back to College, Back to Campus, and they're billion-dollar businesses. You know, Walmart, I think just Back to campaign used to do some $32 billion at that point of time. You know, and India, we saw that there are a lot of brands occupying the space of youngsters and adventure and all of that. But there's nobody who's talking the language of a college kid in India. So, for example, if you, what is you know, the game that people are crazy about in India, right? Cricket, obviously, right? But if you have to go and find a product which is talking about cricket, you will not find anything, even now, right? You will find things around football. You will find, you know, T-shirts with Northern University written, which 99% of the janta doesn't know कि क्या है, right? या फिर वो रहता था या फिर रहता था कि IT से है या फिर IIM से है. But so हमारा insight था कि the guy who is a first time engineer coming from a tier 2 city, you know, first time in, उसके लिए engineer बनना भी बहुत बड़ी बात है. Maybe he's not from an IIT, but the fact that he's an engineer itself is a big thing. The guy who is a CA, उसको पता है कि उसने बहुत मरवाई है, right? But nobody is recognizing that. He wants to say to the world that, you know, boss, I'm a CA. Right? So हमारा एक design होता था Lawsome, which was a thing on law students, awesome, so it was Lawsome. And I think it was sold like 2 lakh pieces for of that, because there was nothing which was talking to the law students in you know, in India. So it was just based on this simple insight, and obviously, you know, we built this brand from grounds up based on this simple insight. There are a couple of other trends that I want to talk to about. Obviously, you know, some of my fellow panelists were talking very deep, right? I'm in fashion. If I'll be talking this deep, you know that I'm doing some PR story, so I don't want to do that. But one trend that I see is that India mein for a long time fashion buzz was being sold on aspiration. So you get the foreign models, you get glamorous looking, you know, these models, and people would buy because white skin, you know, whatever, stylish and all of that. But in the last 6 months to a year, I think we are seeing this shift from there to real life stories. So whenever we do an A/B testing and we have a good foreign model versus a college student, a real-time college student doing something in college, the impact, the sales, everything is much higher for that, right? So this is a distinct shift that we have seen in the last 1 year that I think that you guys can take off from here. You know, anyone who's interested in, I think this is another insight that I'm sharing with you. So maybe will be relevant to you guys in different categories differently, but I think this is something that we are seeing in India.
Good to know, and it was a very candid story. That's why I initially mentioned Gen Z customers. Huh? Shrida, I personally known her and her story. Go for it, Shrida.
So I like stories and I like telling stories, but I'm not somebody who will get convinced and eventually will get converted through stories. तो एंड ऐसे बहुत सारे लोगों को, क्योंकि हम सारे जब एड्स देखते हैं, मेनी ऑफ अस, आई थिंक वी शुड स्टार्ट विद द assumption that our customers are knowledgeable, intelligent, and it's not an assumption, it's a fact though. So we can't fool people with baseless stories or stories that are shallow, and for that it's very important to understand that there are 4 quadrants in which your customers would typically lie. तो एक कस्टमर है इमोशनल, लेट्स से फर्स्ट क्वाड्रेंट जो आपका है इमोशनल, so they would want to hear stories of how the emotion changed before and after they started using or owning a product or a service, right? Then there is the second quadrant, which is amiable. So these are the customers who rely heavily on word of mouth. आपको अच्छा लग रहा है तो मैं भी यूज करूंगी, बट पहले मैं गिनी पिग नहीं बनूंगी, अपने ऊपर एक्सपेरिमेंट नहीं करूंगी, भाई तुझे सही लग रहा है क्या. Then there is the third customer, the third quadrant of customer, that is analytic. So analytic would evaluate, for example, they'll, you know, when you pick a phone, when you pick a laptop, when you invest in something that you're going to use long term, you usually evaluate that इसमें क्या feature है, कितना कैमरा है, गाड़ी लेते हो, and कई बार, and it is very relevant in beauty space also. We see it happening day in and day out because people are going to put it on their skin, and especially in health and wellness conscious individuals, analytic customer segment is on an all-time high. And the fourth quadrant belongs to the leaders. So they would try and pick things that do not come in large batches. So for example, limited edition है, black edition है, या फिर थोड़ा सा premium है, so that अगर मैं कुछ पहन के निकली हूँ तो अगर 5 लोग मेरे जैसे ही कपड़े पहन के निकले हैं तो कई लोगों में तो ब्रो कोड बन जाता है, बट कई लोगों को लगता है ओ माय गॉड, आई डोंट वांट टू बिलोंग टू द मासेस. सो व्हेन यू आर टेलिंग अ स्टोरी, your narrative needs to change, and you need to understand who is talking what and who is narrating what story to which type of consumer, and like sun kaun raha hai, it needs to adapt. I believe the narrative changes immensely from, you know, right from an emotional quadrant wala individual to maybe an analytic to a leader. Although all of us have one of these quadrants, all of these quadrants inside of us, but at that juncture, at that inflection point where the purchase decision is being made, कोई एक चीज थोड़ी सी ज़्यादा होती है, you know. So you need to understand, and then you need to divide your and then all the marketing comms need to be accordingly. Here comes the play of the right content. Sometimes I strongly believe that even if you get the playbook of the most successful businesses or organizations in the world, and even if you get the most successful teams in the world from some other organizations, it may not be as successful. It cannot become your cheat sheet because of the fitment of different parameters at that point in time. So हम ये सोच के नहीं कर सकते कि यार ये उसके लिए बहुत अच्छा चल रहा है तो मेरे लिए भी बहुत अच्छा चलेगा. So stories that are true to you and that are true and relevant to your TG through content. Content could be verbal, textual, it could be physical, video, whatever. That is the important of telling the right story at the right time to the right person.
Great to know. Shrida has been on the other end these days. When Shrida has been listening to a lot of stories, Shrida is currently on the panel of Indian Angels. That's the OTT show of angel investments, wherein a younger entrepreneurs, it's on Jio Cinema, wherein a lot of younger entrepreneurs are coming in and pitching their ideas for investments. So Shrida is now an angel investor. That's when the insights coming out from. Now that we know that you have covered some part of your journey till now, you have started from scratch and your code. When you look back today, I'm sure that you look at yourself differently today. Maybe who was Priyanka in 2020 is different in 2023 right now. When you look back at your journey, when you started your venture, or all through the years, what has been the most challenging turning point in your journey till now? Most challenging one when you thought that earth is shattering right now. Go for it.
For me?
Yeah.
Trust you me, I always say whenever people ask me, if you have started your business with a passion what you had, that time is not going to come. It has never come for me. 3 years I have been in this business because, you know, since my childhood, I have been in this thing, and I belong from a very spiritual family, grown with all these things. I have complete faith in it. That moment, as of now, I have not seen in last 3 years.
Very
so that
fortunate,
is what I say.
very fortunate.
Thank you.
Good to know, good to know. Anybody?
I think when you when you start a startup, it's a I mean, as cliched as it may be, but it's a lifelong sprint. It's not a marathon. So every day you go and you put in all you have, thinking that kal kuch nahi fatega, kal kuch better hoga. But then next day you have another set of challenges, and I think it takes some time to come to terms with the fact that you, your co-founder, your core team members, along with the larger teams, the external stakeholders that you have, all of you are usually, especially the first generation entrepreneurs, are doing it for the first time. You are building it, and you're learning while you're building it, and you're doing it together. So I think making peace with the fact that you will undergo challenges, or you will encounter issues that will break you from places that you don't know exist in your body, will come, and usko solve to karna hi hai. So which is why you need
Black
people,
box, huh? Black box will
yeah,
will
so which
ever
is why
remain
you
there.
need people who've got a good, you know, a strong spine. You need to get up every day. बहुत सारे problems आते हैं. Who would have projected that COVID आएगा? A lot of businesses tanked. A lot of businesses thrived. For us, it was one of the very challenging moments, because Param and I, we are first generation entrepreneurs, and we had left our cushiony corporate jobs. We'd put in everything that we had. We had a failed partnership with some external person. So हमने तो अपने सारे पैसे लगा दिए, but जब उनकी बारी आई तो वो चले गए. तो and we didn't have anything. We had to move to a 180 square feet house, both of us, and उससे पहले कंपनी की तरफ से फॉर्च्यूनर और ड्राइवर मिला हुआ था. तो I mean, you see shitty days, but then you work your ass off to get out of those days, and then do I now start thinking that अब कुछ बुरा नहीं आएगा, या अब कुछ solve नहीं करेंगे? Or but now at least I say that I am wiser in terms of the challenges that I've seen, and I have a stronger team, and I have become slightly more thick-skinned and probably a bit more prepared to face bigger challenges.
So I'll just add, that's what, you know, the passion word. अगर वो passion है ना, तो आप ढूंढ ही लोगे कैसे इसका रास्ता निकालना है. So that's like easy.
Any which ways you're left with no options, huh? You have started the venture, you have to, huh?
Right.
ये honestly मेरा बहुत selfish सवाल था to listen to your crazy stories. Anybody up for that?
Yeah, I actually so much relate to that story, by the way. Like, you know, again, very cushy corporate job in New York, right? You know, and we chose a field, like, you know, which was a very, back in the days, like late 2019, it was a very, I'll say challenging field to start with, sustainability, right? Today it feels like it's a natural sort of transgression for every business, but back in the day it was not there, pre-COVID level, right? So think about a person leaving his job, and 3 months later, like, you know, when they're putting all their savings into their business and everything happened, COVID happens. Wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, you're building a global supply chain, and what we learned at that point was anything, anytime, anywhere can shut down. Ports will shut down, ships will be delayed, factories will shut down, countries will freaking shut down, right? You know, so I think we built our entire business during that period. We had to sell our house, we had to sell everything, again, had to sleep on the floor. So basically we ran out of warehouse space, so I actually stacked boxes in my bedroom 1, bedroom 2, bedroom 3, and then with all my family had to sleep on the floor. So these phases will come, and unfortunately it never gets better, by the way. We thought that $0 to $1 million story will be very tough and then it will get easier. Didn't happen. Then we thought after 10 million it will become easier. Didn't happen. Then we thought after 100 million it will become easier. It still hasn't happened, right? Every day you wake up with 5 impossible problems to solve, and every night you are happy if you are able to solve 2 out of that 5 problems. And there are still like 15 problems that you have to solve and wake up tomorrow and just do it. Like, yeah, as she said, like, work your ass off for 16 hours a day and hope things will work out tomorrow.
So I think, you know, when people are starting a company, right, startup में glam दिखता है बाहर से. So I usually say
right
that
now
you should.
Right now तो बहुत ज़्यादा. We are in the boat of celebrating entrepreneurship like anything.
Yeah. I think we should rename this startup to Tapasya, right? I think that's like the right word for it, because mota moti, you know, that's what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, right? So we started Campus Sutra from a 400 square feet office in a building which was haunted. तो right in the center of Bangalore we found this place जो 32 साल से खाली था. Nobody wanted to go there because stories थी कि रात को वहाँ भूत आता है and all of that, right? So and we got it for like $8,000. So we thought यार Bangalore में बिल्कुल center में मिल रहा है 8,000 में, तो you know what's. And from there we have built like the biggest D2C setup, right? We just have a dispatch center which is like the size of 2 football stadium, right? Just to give you a share of the size. We are the only brand to be there in 22 countries, and we have done all this while being bootstrapped, right? But I think somebody should get into a startup if it is your ikyagi. So मेरे लिए तो ikyagi है. You know, I always say this कि you know I found that this is the only thing I'm good at. Unlike a lot of my founders and all, I'm not good at singing, dancing, making jokes, you know, socializing and all of that, right? This is the only thing I'm good at. This is the only thing I enjoy. So when challenges come, it doesn't feel like challenge. In fact, एक हफ्ते यदि नहीं आता है तो लगता है कुछ गड़बड़ हो रहा है. मतलब you know maybe you know we are not doing it right. So that's how it is.
And I think I changed my perspective from यार ये problem हो रही है to the mindset that you only get the problems that you can solve. So if the scale of your problems is magnifying, that means your ability to solve those is also magnifying. Maybe you've not yet sat down, reflected and thought about it, but of course all of us are improving while we are building it.
Great to know. Do we have anybody in the audience who aspire to become an entrepreneur, irrespective of the age? Anybody? Listen to them carefully.
So if you are a good mathematician, you'll never become an entrepreneur, by the way, right? You know, it's like
it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
Numerically,
right?
it doesn't make sense.
It never adds up.
Statistically, it doesn't add up, right?
That's why I chose journalism. Now that we know that India is at a spot, in a very, very bright spot for the world. We are calling it
One
India's...
shout out for the guy wearing Campus Sutra.
Hi, Campus Sutra guy. We know that India is at a very, very bright spot for the world. India is looking too bright right now, and like entrepreneurship, disruption, innovation is brimming right now. From all of your lens, next year in India, how do you look at D2C as a segment growing? We know that it will never stop. It will only going to grow. It at the moment is still looking very disorganized. Very, very disorganized. But how do you look at D2C story in India next year? What factors, according to you, contribute to this expansion and growth?
So I'll give you a very interesting statistics, right? Any part of the world, any country, any point of time, whenever the per capita GDP has gone up from 2,500 to 5,000, all your discretionary purchases have gone up 4 times, right? So no matter what category you are in the next 6 years in India, that business will become 4 times. So I think, you know, no matter whatever you guys are thinking, I think this is one statistics that all of should kind of, you know, keep it close to your heart. एक वो motivation के लिए भी रहता है, तो हम तो अपनी टीम को हमेशा ये बोलते रहते हैं. So you know, so it's the most exciting time to be in India, and I think in the last 300 years, nobody in India has had it the way we have it now. In the last 7 years, India has exported more than it did in the last 70 years. We have received more FDI in the last 7 years than we did in the earlier 70 years, right? Anyone that you go to US and talk to, they think कि मतलब India है तो फोड़ रहे हैं, मतलब अपना सिक्का चल रहा है, right? I usually share this story. I was in US like a couple of months back, and I took a car to drive, and obviously we being Indians, we don't know how to fill gas. So I was at a gas station and I asked somebody for help. यार मतलब help कर दो, and he was kind enough, and then we were having this discussion and he said, where are you from? And I said, I'm from India. He said, Indians are making rocket and you don't know how to fill gas. Right? So the image of India has completely transformed. We are at this sweet point where you think about it and it can happen. It could not happen 10 years back, it could not happen 50 years back. So no matter what you're doing, it's the most exciting time to be in India and doing things in India.
So I'll also add up to this, the most important thing is now the parents are also playing a role to it. What happens now is schools and colleges, if you see, I have a friend here who does this, I can't see him here. So schools are inviting entrepreneurship like anything, and when you are inculcating that, पहले I belong from Bihar और हमें क्या बोला जाता था, डॉक्टर बन जाओ, इंजीनियर बन जाओ और यूपीएससी दे दो, यही 3 चीजें हमें पता थी, उसके अलावा कुछ नहीं पता. So that's what we used to know. Now, I'm the first generation entrepreneur, and I have been to many schools and I see how they are passionate about it and parents are supporting it. So it has to go up definitely, because आप मन की कर रहे हो तो definitely अच्छा करोगे, और जो entrepreneur बनना चाहता है तो बन के रहेगा यार.
What I would add to that is, like, if there is one place in this entire world, as Dheeraj said, to be an entrepreneur, this is the country, right? You know, that's number one. I'd like to share a personal story here, right? You know, so essentially, contrarian approach, I never thought I'll launch my brand in India, by the way, right? You know, so we were doing pretty well in the Western countries. India is still 2% of our entire business. So we never thought we'll launch it here, okay? So we had one of our employees, right, you know, who was very passionate about India. Rahul, India mein karte hain, India mein karte hain. And I was like, why? Like, why do you want to do it? It's like, no, I have a lot of confidence. Like, you know, no, none of the data shows me that India could be a potential big market for us. He's like, why don't you try it? And then after 3 months of pestering, right, you know, I just finally gave in, saying that, okay, in the spirit of entrepreneurship, let's do it, right? You know, we are a startup, let's just do it. I gave him inventory, and I told him, if you are able to sell this inventory in 3 months, okay, we will continue our business in India, else we'll shut it down. Simple agreement. That guy worked over the weekend, built the entire India online presence for us. We got stocked out in 5 days straight. I thought it's a fluke, right? We again gave him inventory and said, okay, go for it, another month. Again got stocked out in 5 days. All of a sudden we realized that how mistaken we are on the India story. By the way, that also proves that there is a lack of good data here, right, you know. But more importantly, right, you know, we went back to the drawing board, we got the brand ambassadors, then we relaunched our entire India plan. We are now launching in 10,000 stores in India. But the consumption pattern of India, the disposable income, and the willingness to spend. I mean, the third point is really important, right? There are a lot of countries where the per capita GDP is much higher than India, but the consumer confidence drives the willingness to spend. And that is at an all-time high in India. The consumers are exuberant, right? And when 1.4 billion people starts consuming, trust me, even 0.1% adds up to a lot.
That's right.
So that's where we started believing the India
I
story.
will come back again after Sridhar will speak. On what factors do you think this happened? One, your story, your inventory got stocked out in 5 days. What actually magically happened there? What factor actually made that happen? Think on that point. I'll come back to you. Sridhar, go for it.
So now that enough has been said on how the canvas is all ready and how the playground is all ready, I'll share my unpopular opinion, which is, what role do we have to play now that everything is all set, the playground is set. So I believe as a nation that has been stripped of its rich heritage for many decades, for centuries, in order to change our orbit from a yes man and hanji kind of a nation, and we'll follow a certain part of the world, we need to change our orbit, right? And for that we need to be in constant projectile motion, which is why I believe that this is the time when we can be that generation that redefines, or at least we can be the beginning of that generation that redefines how India is positioned on the global map, because there's nothing that is not available in the country right now. So I believe it's our responsibility. We should assume that responsibility as the youth, as the future of the country, to ensure that when we have all the resources that have not been there ever before in the history, and which will continue to only increase for our future generations, we ensure most optimum utilization, and we just don't grow incrementally, we grow exponentially. Will this be easy? Of course not. You know, getting freedom was not easy. Although we don't have to give our lives here, but then we have to give a significant part of our life in changing the orbit. It won't come easy, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be worth it. And we invite many of you, you know, who are genuinely interested in the spirit of entrepreneurship, to give it a serious thought and think about it. And at the same time, if it's not that कोई entrepreneur बन रहा है तो ही वो बस उखाड़ रहा है, honestly, a significant part of the country which may not be directly adding to this ecosystem is also in some way, can also in some way or the other contribute. I really get, I'm very passionate by the way the Indian creator ecosystem has grown over the past few years. किसने सोचा था इस speed पे internet penetration होगा? COVID has really helped us that. Nobody would have thought that even the the lowest strata in the society would be exposed to smartphones and people would become overnight successes. So that's the power, that's the blood of the country. It's young blood, ready to fight, ready to break free, and hence it is us, all of us, who have that responsibility to be in that projectile motion, to tread that journey of developing nation from the the level of a developing nation to a developed nation by 2047.
We clearly know that we are going to grow from 10x to 100x and many zeros and then x. But what factors would add to that?
Yeah, so I'll go back to your previous question, right? Why do we think we sold out so fast, right? So one, again, the data we looked at was not correct, right? Talked about the quality of the data. Most importantly, we underestimate the awareness of the Indian consumer, right? So a lot of times, right, what you also said, right, that if you're asking me to sell that same product for 150 rupees, that's not going to work, right? That's not going to happen. So we also thought that because we are selling sustainable products, we have plastic alternatives, all of that, right? Is Indian consumer really ready for that, right? Are those price points something that is palatable to the Indian consumer, right? Having said that, we are just 10% more expensive than plastic, right? But our assumption was India is not ready for that. And when we took the market survey, everybody was like, no, it's a very price sensitive category. Like, please don't do that, yada, yada. What we very quickly realized is two things. Number one, Indian consumer is much more aware and willing to make the change in pursuit of a better environmental goals. Absolutely, yes, that's happening. It's a massive undercurrent. It's happening for our generation, but in the next generation, when I look at the kids in the school and all, it's happening at a much faster pace. So if it is a growing trend now, it will exponentially grow in the future. That's number one. Number two, how you tell the story, your brand affinity. So again, I'll ask you a very simple question, right? I'll take one of my categories. So we sell products in 6 categories, but one of my categories is disposable tableware. Okay, how many of you have ever bought like a disposable product in your life, right? Plate, chammach, cutlery, glasses, cups, straws, napkins, right? How many of you can recall which brand did you buy? Which brand, sir? Ecoware. Home Truth. Okay. So we did this survey in about 1,500 consumers in close to 15 cities. Like we engaged a couple of marketing agencies for that. 99% of the people in our category could not recall that they bought a product and then could not recall which brand did they buy. So this is what we very quickly realized, the only 8,800 crore category in India where people are not able to recall which brand did they buy. So now for a second, just assume, right, if you go to a restaurant, you like the food and you want to go back to that restaurant, you at least have to remember its name, right? So what we had to really do and very quickly do is that just let's just do something that people remember the name, right? Oh, we bought a disposable product from EcoSoul. The result of that was we never thought of launching, for example, napkins in India, but we were getting 6,000 organic searches a day where people were searching for EcoSoul napkins where we had not even launched their napkins in India. So I think that's what we have to very quickly understand. Number one, do not underestimate the Indian consumer, very aware and very value centric, not price centric. And the second thing is make sure your branding and your story really jives with the Indian consumer.
Coming back to what's changing in India, right? How many of you like cricket here? How many of you know of Javagal Srinath? Good number, yeah. Usually आजकल मैं कॉलेज में बात करता हूँ किसी को पता ही नहीं होता, right? So Javagal Srinath was Bumrah of 90s, right? I still remember कि मैंने एक बार कॉलेज बंक करके इंडिया ऑस्ट्रेलिया का टेस्ट मैच चल रहा था, देखने गया, and Javagal was like in his senses that day. मतलब every ball Ricky Ponting was missing, so he bowls a bouncer, it hits him on his helmet, and this guy being a good guy goes to him, saying sorry and all of that. Ricky Ponting takes his bat, flings at him, and then our guy goes and starts puking, right? So it's nothing about Javagal Srinath, right? It was what we Indians were 10, 15 years back. We just lacked the confidence. Can you just imagine if somebody does that to Virat Kohli today? You know, I love to think about this. कि कोई विराट कोहली को एक बार करे तो मजा आएगा, मतलब, you know, or for that matter anyone, Rishabh Pant, any of these guys, right? So now if you see a guy even coming from a tier 2, tier 3 city, right, he comes with confidence. आजकल कोई भी सर्जी नहीं बोलता है, right? He can hold his own. So I think this is another significant change that is happening in the country apart from economy. You know, that people are becoming confident. पहले I remember being in Walmart, even in the early 2000, right? कोई गोरा आ जाता था तो मतलब आधे लोग थोड़ा दब के बात करते थे. अब वैसा नहीं है. So I think which is like only in consumerism, in terms of how we deal with the world, how the world looks at us and all of that. So I am like bullish on India's story. I think, you know, if there's any one country where, it's like, you know, God has given us a blessing that we are in India at this point of time. You know, that's how I look at it.
That clearly calls for a loud, huge applause. Go for it, guys. I am sure you can do much better. Go for it once more. Thank you so much. I personally enjoyed this session. Thank you so much, each one of you, for making time for this and adding so much value to this panel. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to you, Ravin.
Thank you.